All right, let's dive right into today's explainer. We're going to forensically unpack the staggering dual trajectory of mixed martial arts' biggest ever star, Conor McGregor. We are mapping out this absolutely wild journey from his undisputed history making peaks all the way down to his devastating physical and legal lows. But before we get into the nitty gritty of the timeline itself, we've got to ask the core question driving this whole explainer. What actually broke him? Was it the historic wealth, the massive fame, and all those out-of-cage distractions? Or was his ultimate downfall purely the result of a physical catastrophe? Specifically, the night his tibia just snapped inside the octagon back in 2021. Keep that question in the back of your mind as we go through the evidence. Section 1. A Ghost in Vegas, July 11th, 2026. Now, to truly wrap our heads around his fall, we actually need to fast forward to the dramatic end. 69. That represents the exact number of seconds his highly anticipated comeback lasted against Max Holloway. 5 years of waiting, all for it to be over in just over a minute. Here's exactly what went down. His knee literally just gave way on the very first kick he threw. His face contorts in pain and boom, an immediate TKO loss. It wasn't just a defeat, It effectively slammed the window shut on a legendary career. And honestly, it forces us to trace back through time to figure out exactly how the man who once completely owned Vegas reached this fragile, tragic point. Section 2. The Dublin Prophecy. From plumbing apprentice to UFC sensation. So, to see how we got to that scene in Vegas, we've got to rewind. Way, way back. Before the tailored suits, before the $600 million whiskey deals. Training under coach John Kavanagh, McGregor was literally just a plumbing apprentice in Dublin. He was a kid dodging school bullies, hanging out in local boxing clubs, and using this intense, almost obsessive mental visualization to escape his reality. He spent his nights trying to manifest what seemed like a totally impossible future, fighting in the UFC. And man, his ascent, it was like a rocket ship. He didn't just casually arrive in the UFC in 2013. He struck like an absolute force of nature, debuting with a brutal knockout of Marcus Brimage. From there, he just tore through the division. He dismantled Dustin Poirier in the first round. He beat Max Holloway on one good leg after tearing his ACL mid-fight. And by July 2015, he captured interim gold against Chad Mendes. He wasn't just winning, he was predicting exactly how he would win. Section 3. The Double Champ Apex. Reaching the summit of combat sports. Just 13 seconds. Think about that. That is all it took. One single left hook ended José Aldo's decade-long undefeated reign. In 13 seconds, McGregor became the undisputed featherweight champion. He was effectively the god of the arena, setting the record for the fastest finish in UFC title fight history. Then, November 12th, 2016 at Madison Square Garden, he defeats Eddie Alvarez to become the first ever simultaneous two-division champion in UFC history. Sitting on top of that cage, draped in two belts, he delivered this now immortal line, apologizing to absolutely nobody. This right here, this was the absolute summit of his combat sports career. But as we all know, the air gets pretty thin up at that absolute peak. He took a highly lucrative detour. In August 2017, he stepped out of the cage and into a boxing ring against Floyd Mayweather. Now, he lost the match, sure, but he walked away with over $100 million, crowning him the highest-paid athlete on the planet. But you have to wonder, this incredible wealth seemed to come at a huge cost, visibly fracturing his competitive discipline and focus along the way. Section 4. The Notorious Disintegration. The intertwined physical and legal collapse. All right, this brings us to the heaviest, most complex part of our explainer, mapping out this undeniable physical and legal decline. As the investigation clearly shows, the unraveling didn't start in the cage. It started out in the streets. The out-of-cage incidents just kept piling up. In 2018, there's the shocking criminal incident where he threw a metal dolly through a fighter bus window in Brooklyn. In 2019, he punched an older man in a Dublin pub over a whiskey dispute, and this escalating pattern eventually culminated in a massive, highly publicized civil trial in the Irish High Court in 2024. Now, sticking strictly to the established legal record here, a 2024 civil jury in the Irish High Court found McGregor liable on the balance of probabilities for the 2018 rape and assault of Nikita Hand. He was ordered to pay over 248,000 euros in damages, plus millions more in legal costs. And almost immediately following this verdict, his major sponsorships began to vanish rapidly. And tragically, mirroring all of that legal and personal chaos was a total physical breakdown inside the cage. In January 2021, Dustin Poirier, a guy McGregor had once completely obliterated, handed him his first career knockout loss. A few months later, in their July 2021 trilogy fight, McGregor suffered that gruesome broken lower tibia on live television. And then, compounding all of this, in October 2025, he was slapped with an 18-month suspension for anti-doping drug testing whereabouts failures. The physical collapse was just total. So when we try to evaluate this massive decline, we really need to separate the hard facts from the public noise. The facts are totally undeniable. The historic championships, the massive $180 million earnings in 2021, the civil liability verdict, and the anti-doping suspension. But look at how the public narrative completely shifted. Pundits went from praising a literal god of the sport to dismissing him as a fading celebrity. Fans argued his aura was officially cracked, and speculation ran deep that his elite competitiveness simply died the second that leg broke. Section 5. Legacy of a Disruptor. The final verdict on the McGregor era. Moving to our final evaluation of his legacy, listen, no matter how you personally view his dramatic downfall, there is absolutely no denying this one fact. His unique star power single-handedly elevated mixed martial arts into the mainstream global consciousness. He completely changed the business of fighting forever. He brought eyes, money, and a level of spectacle to the octagon that the sport had never seen before and honestly might never see again. So as we step back and look at the whole picture, we're left staring at two radically different versions of the man. On one side, you have the greatest disruptor, a generational visionary who transformed a niche sport, achieved unprecedented wealth, and dominated two divisions. But on the other side, you have a really dark cautionary tale, a tragic story of a guy whose lack of discipline and devastating legal catastrophes destroyed his athletic prime, proving that at the end of the day, no legend can outrun time or outrun themselves forever. I'm going to leave you with this final thought for today's explainer. How is history ultimately going to judge him? When the dust finally settles on all of this, will he be remembered as the greatest disruptor in sports history or primarily as a cautionary tale? And looking back at that wild timeline, what was the exact moment the Notorious era truly ended for you? Give it some thought. Thanks so much for joining me as we unpack this incredible source material today. And hey, keep questioning the narratives behind the world's biggest figures.